All right, my friends, welcome back to another episode of the Build Show podcast. That's right, my weekly time to get together with you guys and go deep. I have a very near and dear topic to my heart, and I've got a big old time friend, not a big friend. I didn't mean to say that, Wade. I have a good friend, not a big friend. Wade's very skinny. I have a very good friend of mine on the podcast today, a fellow builder who's actually been building longer than me, even though he's younger than me, which I don't appreciate about Wade. But we're going to be talking about pre-construction agreements and really specifically how to get out of the bidding carousel. I mean, it is a game that I played for years, and it is not a winning game. It's not a lot of fun, and I get questions all the time about how I made that transition. So Wade and I are actually giving this talk, and by the time you hear this, we will already have given our talk at Build Show Live on the same topic. So you're kind of getting the podcast version of Wade and I's pre-construction agreement talk from Build Show Live. That being said, from the Reisinger Build Studios in Austin, Texas, let's get going. Guys, before we jump into the Wade on today's topic on pre-construction and stopping bidding, I want to say a big thanks to my friends at Pella for sponsoring our podcast. You know, it's companies like Pella that have invested in the Build Show that allow us to do all this content, especially really good content like today, for free because they've sponsored. So thank you, Pella, for sponsoring. If you don't know Pella, I'm actually excited. In about a month, I'm flying out to see their factory tour behind the scenes. I think they're like 100+ years old, building their products right in the heart of America. They're based in Pella, Iowa. And I used Pella, if it's hard for me to even believe it, for the first time about a year and a half ago on the Reisinger Build project, which was last year's Build Show Live show house. And I got to tell you, I had fabulous results with Pella. We did a mid-construction blower door test when all the windows and doors were in place. And by the way, this was all Pella exterior doors. I had a Pella slider, a Pella swing door, and a Pella front door unit, along with some push-out casements from Pella. And the pre-drywall blower door score with all those installed, not the door to the garage. That was the only door I didn't have installed, so we put the blower door there. And we blew like a 0.4 or something ACH 50. And these are mostly double glazed windows, not even like triple glazed, and not even passive house certified. I did have a couple triple glazed products in there, but I couldn't believe how tight it was. It was really an eye opener for me, because I've had that same test and seen that same test with a lot of other manufacturers where somebody will get like a 1.5 or a 2.0, and they're like, oh gosh, what happened? And if you were to run the fogger test, you'd see, oh my gosh, windows and doors can be extremely leaky if you choose the wrong thing. So big kudos to Pella. That was the Lifestyle series, which is not even their most expensive product. It's kind of a mid-price product. I was really excited. So big fan of Pella, and thanks for sponsoring the podcast. Guys, let's jump in with Wade Paquin, who's standing by on the Zooms today. Wade, good morning.
Hey, man. How are you, buddy?
Good, doing real good. Wade, for people who don't know you, tell us your company name, because you actually did a bit of a rebrand on the company recently, right?
Yeah, very recently. So anyone who's listening or watching this who knows me probably knows my business is WKP Construction, based out of Newport, Rhode Island. We've rebranded to WKP Builders. Have a whole new logo and everything, which we're very, very happy with. It's been quite a process, but it's looking good and it's being well received. So we're pretty pleased with it. But we've also moved our headquarters to historic Tiverton Four Corners, which is in Rhode Island, about 30 minutes east of Newport. But we're still maintaining an office in Newport and Block Island. So we're in 3 locations now.
Goodness gracious, Wade. And how many years have you been in business now? Over 20, right? Are you coming up on 25 soon?
This June was 22 or 23 years, like, since we, formed the business. But, I was doing this a few years before that on my own, before actually making it official. So yeah, probably close to 25, on my own.
That's awesome, man. We just hit our 20th anniversary, or we're about to this fall. November is when I incorporated in 2005 as Reisinger Homes, and then rebranded, I don't know, maybe 5-ish years ago to Reisinger Build.
Right.
But we didn't change any of the corporate structure. We didn't change any of the tax filings. We just did a DBA. Wade, I want to talk specifically today because I think you and I have a very similar story when it comes to this topic of moving from the traditional kind of 3-bid situation to pre-construction agreements, which I would tell you, and I think you would agree, has vastly changed my business for the better over the years. So would you agree?
Oh yeah, that's why when you paused, I was like, hugely changed.
Yeah, for the better.
No, I should add too that COVID helped that for me personally. We made that transition 2017-ish, and once COVID came and prices were all over the place, nobody could bid a job or a lump sum fixed price. It was just like, it's a death sentence essentially, right? So that really helped get some traction for all the other builders that were not doing the way you and I were doing it and are doing it, to get some traction for them. Now it's a little bit more of the norm in our industry to see. You see a lot more cost plus structures and pre-construction starting to, other builders starting to do that, which is great to see.
Oh, that's fabulous. That's funny. Because my market, I'm in Austin, Texas, has been so oriented towards or away from the 3-bid process for so long, I didn't realize that was happening in your market. I wonder if listeners are experiencing that as well. So if you guys are listening to this later, shoot us a comment, a DM, let's say on Instagram, at WKP Builders on Instagram, right? And I'm Reisinger Build on Instagram. I'm curious whether your market has changed, but I want to rewind time a little bit for both you and I, and let's talk about a couple of war stories from 3-bidding out there. And I'll go first, and then you can piggyback. So the last time I 3-bid, where I was a part of a multiple bidder situation where I gave an actual hard bid on a project along with multiple others, was during the recession. It was 2000, probably 8 or 9, somewhere right in that time frame. Maybe even 2010. And it was a local architecture firm that I really think does fabulous plans. It's actually Barley and Pfeiffer is their name. I had a 50-page set of plans to bid off of, and I had a 100-page set of specs. So really detailed, like down to every light fixture. Here's the type of, remember back in the day when they'd specify LED bulbs or LED cans? Like, here's the exact LED light bulb, which were like $100 each back then or something crazy. Like, they were super detailed. They were fabulous plans, frankly. I like building with those guys because they're so good. And so I kind of figured, all right, the client's asking me to do this. I didn't want it to do it. I wanted to be hired under a pre-construction agreement, but frankly, I needed the work. It was the recession. And I also kind of thought mentally, well, this is likely the best set of plans I've ever built on in my fairly young career. I've been in business maybe 5 years when this happened. So I get this huge set of plans. I sent it out to all my subs. I did really good takeoffs. I think I'm like a 3 or 4 person company at this time. So there's not a lot of people involved at Reisinger Homes then. So I was very engaged in the process and frankly, really wanted the job. So I was really engaged with the homeowner, engaged with the architect, asking questions. Sometimes we call those RFIs, requests for information, like make sure I understand what's happening here and here. Long story short, I submit my pricing and I forget what it was. It was like 1.2 million on this house. And it was a really detailed, nice custom home. Probably would cost 3 million to build today, or maybe even more. But I submitted it. I knew for sure that one of my builder friends was also bidding it, a guy that I liked and had good feelings about, knew he'd done a good job because we had 2 or 3 subs that were the same, where when I called my HVAC guy, he's like, oh yeah, Branson's also pricing that. I'll send it over. I get his bid back in 30 minutes from the time I call him, which means that he'd already done the pricing. And whether he gave me the same price as the other guy, I don't know, but I did have a bid back like that. And then there's a third guy bidding, total wild card. Don't know who he is, not sure what he's built before, have no idea if he's really a qualified competitor to me. And I have very little information after I submit this bid package. And Wade, this was the time when I was giving everybody paper, like binders in my bids, like a big stack, 3-ring punch, looking nice, cover page that I printed on the front. Yeah. I wanted to look professional. I give it to the architect who's going to, give it to the client and give them the info. And I hear back, oh my gosh, Matt, you got the project. I was elated. Oh my gosh, I'm so thankful I got the project. So I asked the homeowner, Ed, that I'd become friends with over time, like a couple weeks later, hey, Ed, why'd you choose me? I'm curious. Well, Matt, you were the middle bidder, and that's what the internet said to choose. And I was like, what? You took me because I was the middle bidder, like not because I was so organized or handsome or smart, oh yeah, you're the middle guy. So then I dig deeper. Well, the more expensive guy was like 10% more than me. I was thinking, wow, he's a really good builder. I wonder why he was that high. And he was like 1.4 million instead of 1.2. So I got a little bold. Hey, Ed, how would you feel about me taking a look at what they gave you? I'm curious. So I get my buddy Branson's bid package. He's a friend, so he won't mind me telling this story. And I get it back, and it looks just like mine, frankly. Big, thick binder, lots of info. And I really was like, I wonder how he got all these different numbers. Here's 3 subs that are the same, like almost the exact same number in a couple categories. Well, guess what? He bid a different painter, and his painter was, $30,000-$40,000 more than me. And Branson, even though the specs were super detailed, bid the cabinetry to a guy who does like furniture grade cabinetry in town, who's fabulous. And I put the number in for like the medium priced cabinet guy, and that was $100 and some thousand. I forget what the total was, but you put in cabinetry and paint, maybe a difference in fee, and maybe 2 other things, and boom, there's $200,000. And in effect, I was giving the exact same bid. Had the client or the architect looked at it, they would have realized, oh, this is the exact same bid. We should probably ask some more questions or vet them a little more. I'm thankful I didn't, because Branson was, frankly, probably a better builder than me. He'd been in business longer, and he really liked this furniture cabinet guy. The other bidder literally gave a 4-page bid that was a spreadsheet. It was total garbage. It looked like he had done it the night before, and he was like 25% less than us. It was like a total garbage bid. And here I am thinking, I spent like freaking 3+ weeks of my life poring over these numbers and making sure I had it, and meeting subs and making sure they had everything in there. And I got picked because I was the middle freaking bidder who got lucky, basically, that I got the job. And it just reminded me that the process is thoroughly flawed when someone comes to get 3 bids. And clients have no idea what they're looking at. I got chosen because the internet told him to choose me. And my builder friend, who was just as good as me, probably should have, frankly, even got the job, was the only mistake he made was not saying, hey, I can use these cheaper cabinets like Matt's proposing, or these more expensive cabinets. And the funny thing is, when I talked to the client and showed him the difference between the cabinet makers, he did a $150,000 change order with me. And we did the exact same other bid, basically, as the other guy. So he got the same price after all. And I was, praise God, I got the job, because I was like, I had $6 in my account at the time. I needed the money. But there's my war story, Wade, of like, this is the dumbest thing ever. I'm not doing this again. No way am I going to 3-bid a project. How about you? Any good war stories out there on that process?
Well, and it just reminds me hearing that too. And I think I didn't come up with this phrase. I think Sean Van Dyke, the great construction business coach consultant, when I had engaged Sean years ago, he's great, had said that the design, bid, build process is broken, and just stuck with me. Frankly, I give him credit back then, 2016, 17, for pushing me in this direction to get away from that broken system. Because for years prior to that, I'm driving around, you have them in your market, I'm sure, different subs, painters, whoever, these vans and work trucks that say free estimates. Right? So and it always hit me like, why am I working for free? These bigger, larger, complex jobs that, like you, when it was just me wearing a lot of hats for my business, starting grow my company. I was doing all the estimating and bid proposals, and some of the bigger jobs, I put over 100 man hours into it.
100%.
Like, why am I working? Why am I working for free? Right? I should be paid for this service, and that's really like kind of that light bulb moment for me was understanding that the process was broken.
Yeah.
But to your point, I've been in very similar situations where, these are the norms that I don't know who came up with it, but they've been around for a while, that said you should get at least 3 bids. And if you get 3 bids, throw out the high, throw out the low, and go with the middle guy.
That's how I won.
But it's right. And it happens all the time. It would happen to me.
Yeah.
If you get 4 bids, then talk to the 2 guys in the middle and figure out which one you want to go with, right? Now, and so, back 10, 15 years ago, we were losing jobs because we were high. But were we really high, right? When you have a set of drawings that aren't complete to the level you were just speaking to, or a set of project specifications, outline specifications, project manual, right? Different terms for kind of the Bible of the project, and an architect who's taken the time to detail everything right down to the hinge and screw types and finishes, accurately bid a job. There's so much left for interpretation, right? I'm going to build, my means and methods are my way, and important to me. It might be someone else is doing something totally different, and someone else who doesn't have the experience or the knowledge, or is using crappy materials or
folks or labor.
Right. So you start to get this wide range of numbers when you have that system, right? I mean, I remember in jobs where there was a couple $1 million project, and one guy was like 800,000 lower. Like, it's just like alarm bells, right? Like, that's just not possible. But when we would bid jobs where those details were there, 100+ page drawing set, big thick project manual, and it was frankly one of the jobs you toured, one of maybe the first videos you and I did together at the field house.
I love that house.
Yeah, I know you do.
I love that house.
And that's near and dear to me. But that process, that was in 2015. So it was before I changed, my business model.
Yep.
And that was the competitive bid. But because there was so much information, that job at the time was like, I want to say like 1.7, 1.8, somewhere.
Oh my gosh, so cheap.
The other qualified builder at the time, he and I were, I think, only $15,000 or $18,000 a partner bid.
Gosh, wow, that's so close.
Was there, and it was a very respectful builder. He did great work. And you can see when you put the effort into pricing something and that information's there, you get tight numbers. When the information is not there, it's really up for interpretation, and it just the problems, right? It's like, you've heard me. I'd say to clients all the time when I'm trying to, pitch and preach these types of services and the value in them, that a project is handicapped right out of the gate if a builder is involved, period.
Yes, 100%. I love that. We need to quote you on that, Wade. Say that one more time. A project is handicapped right out of the gate.
With the gate if a builder is not involved and part of the team.
That is such a good quote. I'm writing that down and putting that on my phone. I'm going to quote you on that. And part of that, this is a quick tangent. I'll bring it back quickly, but part of that is because our owners, our architects, all kinds of people don't understand that there's a difference in both labor and materials between companies. And 2 quick examples. An example from 30 minutes ago, I was late letting you on the Zoom call because I was texting with an old client of mine who said, hey, I'm going to get some bids on my HVAC service. And this is a client who has the money and is probably the most detailed client with indoor air quality. Like, they put a Zender system in, they put a good multiple dehumes in. Like, they really care about indoor air quality. They have a kid that has really bad mold allergens, and she wants to bid the HVAC service on. It's actually a second home, and I said, well, who's doing it now? And she told me the company, and I said, why would you bid someone else? There's no one else but these guys. They installed the system. They understand it. Please don't get penny wise and pound foolish on me. I didn't say it quite like that, but basically, like, do it, pay it. I don't care if it's a small fortune. You can't bid that in so important phase to you to anybody else. There's no one qualified but that guy, frankly. Another quick example that I use all the time is I often, and I know you do too, get CEO and these clients that feel like, oh, you're just a dumb builder. I could do your job if I could, if I had the time to build it. And so they want to comment on so many phases of the budget. And this is a job that I always come back to because the client was so budget focused and so inept that they didn't know what they didn't know. And so they were pounding me on my painting estimate that I put in their bid. And the reason why I didn't put a bid in, because at the time I only had one painter that I thought was worth anything. And this guy wasn't a good businessman at all. So I worked out a deal with him where he gave me like a week rate for his guys, and I would plug in how many weeks I thought it would take and then put that number in. Well, it was a expensive custom home. It needed a really good paint job. It had really good level 5 smooth everywhere, super modern. I think the paint budget was $150,000, which will shock some of you, and others like Wade will be like, oh yeah, $150,000, sure. That's actually kind of a small budget on paint. This guy thought it was insane. Well, Matt, I've painted XYZ number of houses and I've never spent more than $50,000, yada, yada. And I was like, I don't want to say his name in case he's listening to the podcast. Mr. X said, Matt, I just can't believe that we would need to spend that much. And finally, I had to be like, you hired me because I'm an expert. And trust me, this is the guy. When it was all said and done, it was an AIA Homes tour house. Everyone who walked it thought it was immaculate. I'm still really good friends with the homeowners today. And I always come back to that when I talk to people about price. Like, you just don't know prices unless you've been doing this for 20 years like I have. So please trust me. That's why you're hiring me, is I'm going to put the right people on the job and we're going to make sure we get you the right price, but for a really well-built house. So little tangent.
Yeah. And that I will add to that's part of, this process for me. And I think you too, is that the clients that, can understand and appreciate what the pre-construction process can do for them in their projects are the clients that you want, because they're the ones that find value in what you do and what you bring to the table, right? The clients that don't see the value in that are probably not your ideal client. And you should probably think about the power, the power of saying no.
Yep. That's right. 100%. Wade, let's switch gears and talk about the switch to pre-construction agreements, kind of how you do that at first, and then let's spend a few minutes on kind of our process today. So I'll start. I learned about pre-construction agreements about 15 years ago now, where I still to this day kind of use this analogy. I'll tell clients, well, this is my dating contract. It's like a 2-page agreement. It's not super thick or detailed, but it lays out, hey, here's the process I'm going to take with you in this process of designing and getting a price for this new build that you want to build or frankly, remodel. And for that, you're going to pay us hourly for our estimating services. And here's the hourly rate. And so we're going to ask for a deposit on that hourly rate. And if we get to the end of that deposit amount and need some more, we'll re-up you. But this is how we're going to give you really good expert advice through this whole process of designing a house to make sure that when you get to the end, you don't end up in a situation that happens so much with clients out there where they, send the 3 bids out to a builder and they find that all 3 of them are double what they wanted to spend. I mean, this is like, if you go on the internet, this is a 100% usual situation. So at the time when I started doing in like 2011, maybe it was the first pre-construction agreement. I think we asked for a $5,000 deposit. And I would usually, prior to getting that, give them some ballpark range that I felt like the house was going to be in. And I mean, we weren't particularly good at it back then, or we weren't very detailed or formal about it like we are today. But I didn't want them going in thinking, oh, I can build this, 5,000 square foot house for $1 million that has all these details. I wanted them to at least have some version of, this is probably a, $1.5 to $2 million house based on this size and these requirements that you're telling me from this initial schematic design that I'm getting, so that we don't have a very wrong set of expectations before we even get started on the relationship. And frankly, I didn't want to owe them if they were going to write me a check on that. So we took a $5,000 deposit, and I loved that, and my team loved that because that felt like they had skin in the game. You know, Wade mentioned the free estimates earlier on the side of the van. No more. You know, we're training them. Hey, our estimator is $100 an hour, $75 an hour, $50 an hour, whatever it was back then. And so when you ask me to give you detailed information, we're going to spend 8 hours on that over the course of a week or whatever it is. And then I'm going to show you, hey, here you go. This is what your $1,000 bought you, a high level estimate on whatever it was, but that our time is valuable. How about you, Wade? It sounds like you've been doing it for maybe 8 years now. What was that transition like for you in terms of kind of signing an agreement and getting a check from these people?
Scary at first, right? How are you going to sell this to clients and architects when the norm was that bid system process, right?
Yep.
And not having done it before and having any experience or references, right? If someone said, well, I want to talk to a client who's done this with you, you're like, well, you're the first one, you know, like it's intimidating. But what I found was remarkable is that architects welcomed it with open arms.
Mm-hmm.
Architects will tell you, at least the ones I've talked to, they don't like the bid process. They don't like having to do apples to apples comparison because it's not apples to apples. It's apples to, you know,
Bananas.
yeah, no.
Cones, I like it.
Yeah. It's just like you just can't do it, right? Unless you have that level of detailed drawings and stuff and whatnot. But that's very rare in our industry, right? So what I found is that they welcomed it because it made their job easier. They could work with a partner out of the gate. And they could do, well, as I always say, kind of my little tagline on all this is to take design and scope in tandem. Think about like putting design and scope in like a funnel and having it blend and come together, like streamlining that process.
Yep.
So it was very welcomed. And what I found was that the clients, when I explained to them what we were doing, immediately saw value in it and jumped on board. So it wasn't really, for me, now I know I'm in a unique, different market than, you know, a lot of the country, but it wasn't a hard transition for me when I explained it. Now, granted, you have to explain it well, and you have to have the confidence behind it, even though it was new, kind of like a fake it till you make it sort of approach, right? Like it's new to me, but I feel that this is the best way. So I'm the confidence knowing that I felt this is the better approach, I think was an important part of my presentation for it to really sell it. And when you can sell it with confidence because you truly believe in it, then I think that really resonates with that client or the architect. And they say, you know, hey, I get it. Like, let's do it.
Yeah, for sure.
Similar to you. I mean, even to this day, you know, it's a 1-pager agreement, basically just, you know, kind of says what we're going to do. And it hits on like, I think the 5 key areas of pre-construction, right? Defining vision and scope, establishing a realistic budget, streamlining the schedule, identifying and solving problems early on rather than in construction. And I think most importantly is that process builds a relationship, which in turn builds trust with that client and architect. So by the time you start this process and go through it, you mentioned, you know, this is my my dating agreement or however you referred to it.
Yep.
You really get to know the client and the architect because you're working together. You're collaborating as a team.
Yes.
Many hours from sometimes on these bigger projects for months and pre-construction before even thinking about, you know, mobilizing and breaking ground. So when you go through that process and you're asking the right questions to the client and the architect, and you're providing your experience through ideas, value engineering ideas throughout that process, maybe a different way to do something, or like, you know, we have our, you know, we call WKP standards, lots of specific details that are important to us on every build.
Ooh.
Architects don't draw those details. So we say, hey, can we, here's like, you know, my bathtub spray font.
Yes.
Do that. Yeah, that's great. So you have these opportunities to really kind of showcase your value and expertise in that process. And like, think of it, if you're a client and you've hired this team and you've got a builder who's working closely with you, your architect of choice or the builders, and you're having these ongoing conversations and constantly trying to find a way to build your client the best house at a very fair, reasonable price through your ideas and experience, how are they not going to say, you're my guy at the end of that process?
Totally.
It's like, almost a guarantee, because you've proven yourself at that point, right? You've built that level of trust.
That's so interesting. I've known you for probably a decade now, maybe not quite a decade, just shy of 8 or 9 years. And I've been to your jobs dozens of times. And I see you using a lot of those same details, like the bathtub detail, or you were maybe one of the first guys that I saw that would like put a piece of tape on the foundation and then use liquid flash the tape, peel it off, make it nice and straight. I didn't realize that you had a standard set of details that you actually even give to the architect to say, hey, let's incorporate these WKP details that we're using on all our jobs. That's so fascinating. I need to incorporate that. I love that. Something that I do, Wade, that maybe our listeners will like is I give people a Reisinger roadmap document, and I forgot to mention this earlier. When I meet with them initially at the schematic phase and say, hey, here's how we work. Here's why you want to hire us as your builder. Here's why you want to hire us under a pre-construction agreement. I give them this document that's now maybe 5 pages. That's like, here's how we operate. Here's our cost plus billing. Here's how we deal with invoices. Here's how we are going to get a deposit from you. Here's our pricing that's tiered. We charge a little bit higher fee on smaller jobs and a slightly lesser fee on bigger jobs. Here's the contingency amount we're going to put away. It's just all this kind of fine, for lack of a better term, business detail, so that when people are evaluating me before they hire me, there's no surprises later. Oh my gosh, I didn't know you're charging hourly for project management. Well, it's on that Reisinger roadmap document straight from the get-go, which my business partner, Tim, always loves to say, we're training them right from the beginning that our time's valuable. And then when we're on the job, you're paying us for it, which translates all the way down to the service side of the house too. We switch them to a maintenance and service agreement at the end of the job. We've already trained them that we bill our people hourly. And so now here's Justin's hourly rate to come back and do whatever needs to happen after you moved in. So it's that really valuable relationship. And at this point in our business, being 20 years old, we probably have at least a third of our jobs going with past clients who do repeat business with us. I'm curious, Wade, what is your win rates from people who sign a professional services agreement to actually bidding the job? What percent of those do you end up doing?
I have, thankfully, I have not lost a job per se to another, competitor builder after going through that process. That hasn't happened. We have had, for various reasons, a project not move forward for instance, we had one client that we were working with for nearly 2 years, went through 2 different designs, family compound, I don't need that big of a house, let's downsize it, all new drawings, back to Sierra Coastal Resource Management, all the permitting, you name it, 18 months, only to find out that he could not demolish the house that he said, I raised my boys here, I just emotionally, I can't do it. Well, what do you can't be like, hey, you really screwed up my schedule. You have to respect it and say, look, I understand, and get off the phone and go cry. Right. But so things like that have, happened here and there for one reason or another, just a project just hasn't moved forward. Mm-hmm. But other than that, we haven't, gone through that process. And then they say, well, we didn't tell you, but we were also doing pre-con with another guy and we're going to go with him. It just doesn't happen. And they're going to commit, pay you, they came to you for a reason anyway. They probably want you to do this whole thing anyway, which is why you're in agreement for pre-con. So it's very unlikely that after going through pre-construction that, they're just going to say, forget it. You're not a guy.
Totally. Yeah. I would say that we're probably in the exact same boat. with one fun story that's not an exception, but along the same line. I've heard from several people who didn't hire us for pre-construction that those jobs turned out to be a problem later. Another thing I got a couple funny stories on that side, but there's been several clients who haven't hired us over the years who washed out during the kind of interview phase because they didn't like our contract. And we have a frankly fairly what I would call builder oriented contract that I use as a little bit of a litmus test. Like, if you're going to send this to your lawyer and bleed all over it, you may not be somebody who wants to build with us. You know, if you can't control your lawyer into giving us 87 red lines, then I'm not sure that I need to work with you.
Yeah.
You know, if you have one thing you want to change, or you have 3 questions about the contract, no problem. But I've had several clients over the years who were like, you know, not only will I not sign that contract, but you got to sign this contract of mine, this, you know, whatever AIA contract. And we'll be like, no, we're not going to do that. And, you know, they kind of changed or went another way. So at least a half dozen of those I can probably think of over the years where they didn't sign our contract. They didn't hire us. And I heard back from the builder or somebody in the grapevine who said, oh, that contractor got sued, got, you know, fired, all kinds of things, including I've had at least 2 or 3 clients who've come back to me over the years and said, hey, can you take this project over at the framing stage? You know, I'm going to fire my builder. I'm really sorry I didn't hire you. I'm like, no, we're not going to take over this project that you didn't hire me on, because all of a sudden now you realize that the pricing I told you wasn't ridiculous. And you went with the cheap guy, and now you're paying the price for that. So it's both encouraging and discouraging to hear back from those jobs in the future.
Yeah. So 2 things. I would say that, you know, one thing I've done to, when I always feel that when a client comes to us for pre-construction, that sometimes they just flat out express like, you know, we want you to build a house. Pre-con makes sense. Let's do it. We started issuing not only just a pre-construction agreement, but a cost plus construction services agreement at the same time. So basically saying, you know, you're going to engage us and pay us for pre-construction, and you're signing and engaging us and giving us a deposit for construction. Because if we're going through 2 or 3 months of pre-con, I'm not going to put you on our production schedule unless you sign the contract and give a deposit, so you get in the queue. So a lot of times we get both at the same time. So we can just roll from pre-con right into construction and not have that delay of, well, now here's my construction agreement. And, you know, if attorneys start going back and forth, that's typically a red flag. But usually it's pretty seamless. That's one thing I've done to kind of, you know, mitigate that and just make it a little easier, which seems to work really well, and get commitment. So, you know, on the construction services agreement, on the deposit, if you decide not to move forward, 50% of that's non-refundable. So that usually flag them and like, are you serious or are you not? You know, like, oh, well, can you make that non-refundable? Okay, so you want to sign it, but you might want out, you know? So
Yep.
It's just another way of looking at it. And then my other point I was going to make, yeah, we've had clients that, you know, geez, I don't know that we want to pay for pre-construction. You know, they interview 3 builders or whatever, and they're going to talk to 1 or 2 others and get bids from that. You know, we'll do more of a high level range, or just break out like CSI divisions and just put like either a number or a range on the division, but I'm not giving like a detailed schedule of values at that point. And we've had plenty of clients that, you know, pass on our services for that, and will come back many months later and say, you know, hey, this just isn't working out. Then the builder keeps saying he's going to get us a number, you know, 1 week, one deadline turns into another, and then we finally get it, and it's lacking so much information. He only put numbers on the shell of the house and not the interior. And so we need more time. Like, are you willing to help? You're like, told you so.
Yeah.
You know, so that can happen too, you know?
Yeah.
So, and those are tough ones because you're like, man, you didn't find value in what we were offering you, and you chose this other path, and now you're coming back. And I'd say majority of the time, you know, they're good people, and we want to help them, so we'll engage and move forward with it. But but that does happen.
It does happen. You mentioned the word value. I actually want to kind of end with this because we're 40 minutes in, so I don't want to go super long, but let's talk about value engineering for a minute, because I think that one of the big benefits of hiring you or I for pre-construction is that you get our eye on the job to say, hey, how would you save some money on this? Like, hey, these numbers are coming back 10% higher than I would want them to be, or whatever the number is. You know, how have you and what have you done in the past to kind of work on that pricing with them? Well, what's your strategy on that? What's the benefits of hiring somebody for pre-construction on that?
Yeah. So, I mean, if I think it's important that if you're, you know, trying to offer pre-construction to a client, you need to have significant experience in building a home. Like for me, very high-end complex custom homes, to be able to provide that level of insight, right? If you don't have, what I call like the seat time, right, in it, it's, 10 years ago or 20 years ago, Wade was much less experienced than current me, right? So like, and I'm always learn just like you, but I think that, there's a level of experience that goes along with the value engineering. And if a client's hiring someone with a lot of experience, like you or I, we can provide a lot of insight into how to do things differently. And our approach is always, right, I mean, we really appreciate and value our relationships with the architects we work with. So, and we know they've put like a lot of heart and blood and sweat into their design.
Yep.
I don't want to go after the design intent, right? It's usually, what can we do without going after that, right? What changes can we make? What modifications can we make? Can we get away from some structural steel and go to structural wood?
Yep.
Can we dumb down the finishes, right? Can we focus on custom cabinetry in the kitchen and the primary bath, and maybe dumb it down a little bit in the guest bathrooms? And so there's different ways that you can approach it. And I find that clients really value that information and insight, because, again, I think our job as the experienced builder, especially in pre-construction, is to really look at all different aspects of a project, from where the site is, its access, right? Everything that could cost money. Because if you can't get a truck in there, if you don't have staging area, where are you going to put all this stuff? Where's the equipment going to go? Where's the lumber going to sit?
Yep.
So there's a lot of aspects of this that in pre-con you should be identifying if you're going to offer that service. And I think that like I said, the clients really appreciate that, because our job is to provide options and educate the client so they can make the best decision for themselves, right? We're not going to make the forum, but if we can say, here's options, here's the pros and cons, here's the cost implications, they can come back and ask questions about it, understand it better, and then make a good decision for themselves.
Yeah, and I'd piggyback on that by saying, well, I think one of the things our team's done really well with pre-construction agreements is we've tried to be really good about coaching people that costs per square foot are talking about framed footage before you get too far in your design, so that you don't overbuild the house accidentally. And frankly, this is one of the things that I'm proud of at my personal house. I have a 2,800 square foot house, and I built it really well and really detailed. And one of the reasons why I built 2,800 square feet is because I reused my slab, and I had this kind of constraint built in. When you start with a blank sheet, if you don't have constraints, you can end up with too big of a house. And to build it to a good standard just costs more money. So if you can be honest with people, here's the range of footages on these portfolio houses you're seeing of mine. These houses cost between X and Y per framed foot. Remember, we got to include your garages, your basements, your porches. An outdoor porch is just as expensive as your living room, except it doesn't have a heating and cooling system. So, you could drop $10 a square foot on that outdoor porch, but other than that, it's the same price per square foot as your living room. So let's be really smart about how big we're building. And this is really a top of mind for me, Wade, because I just lost a project recently that we spent 9 months of pre-construction, paid for it. We didn't lose money per se, but the project kept growing. And my team was like, hey, remember these retaining walls we're adding, this basement square footage, this media room, this is going to add to the cost per square foot. This is adding to the budget. And they had a really healthy budget to begin with. And we ended up 1.5x their initial healthy budget at the end. And they just had this freak out moment like, oh my gosh, I can't spend this. How do we get there? And it was death by 1,000 cuts. Every meeting we're talking about adding, a couple thousand, a couple $100,000 that all of a sudden it adds up into a big 7-figure number that they just couldn't believe at the end. And we had coached them all along that we were adding, and here's the new budget, and here's the new budget. And then all of a sudden it was like, we can't do this. We're going to scrap this lot and sell it and find a different piece of property. Now, maybe they might end up building with us in the future. But it was just one of those moments like, gosh, we've got to continue to coach people on, you build a bigger house, it's a more expensive house. We need to build better, smaller projects to make them more affordable.
Yeah, and that's part of that VE, that value engineering and pre-con, right? And when I talked about taking design and scope and budget and working that in tandem, it's so you're working alongside the client, the architect, to make sure that, as you know, every time there is a corner on a house, a jog in a foundation, that translates to cost.
Yep.
Jogs on a foundation typically lead to more complex roof lines, right? So structurally, that adds cost. So there's all these things that you can coach and guide on throughout that process. But unlike you, and I think you and I recently talked about this, my experience is quite different than that, because when we've, value engineered jobs, which happen this often, and we've taken hundreds of thousands, $1 million off of a project.
Yeah.
Spent weeks doing that, only to start the job and everything was removed, comes back in and some. Right?
We've done that too. We've done that a lot.
I have never had a project where everything that was VE'd out stays out.
Yeah.
It all comes back and more and more and more. And it's wild to me, but that's just my experience with it. It's because when we start projects, during the project, I have never in 20 something years now had a client say, you know what, let's not do that custom kitchen. Let's start taking things, like it just doesn't happen. And it's, I don't know, logically, it's such a interesting component to this process that I still don't understand it, but all clients asking us to do. And if they, they want to spend more money later on after wanting to save some, hey, that's their prerogative.
I can't tell you how many times I've had clients in early meetings say something to the effect of, I can't spend a penny over $1 million in this project. So don't even, what are we doing here? Or make sure you don't get me of this. And then they end up at 2x or 3x what the original number was. And they're happy with it and they love it, but clients need to be taught what it costs to do things. And sometimes their initial, I can't spend a penny over $100,000 really means they really want to spend and have the ability to spend $300,000, but they need to be taught that that's a valuable and that's an okay amount of money to spend on what they want.
It's so ask your client this next time, because I find it works miracles for me, is it's always helpful to understand what the budget is, right? Right from the beginning, from schematic design, and what do you want to spend on this house? Or do you want to spend on this renovation? Let's just say someone says it's $1 million. okay, where did they get that number from, right? Like you don't have like square footage yet. You don't have a house to, really give the analysis on, but they want to spend $1 million. So what can they get for $1 million? And then I'll ask them, sometimes if we come in and there's already a schematic drawing set there, so we understand the direction of the house, and I can run some quick numbers, and maybe it's not tracking for the budget. I'll ask this question, and I'll say, at what is the number that would adversely affect your lifestyle? Meaning, like, what's the up here? You're grabbing $1 million for some reason, whether that's financially, your financial advisor says don't spend more than this, or it's just a feel good number to you, or somewhere little, right? But when I've asked that question, and I always say, I don't need the answer, think about it and get back to me. Because the clients will come back and say, I sat down with my wife and we talked through this, and yeah, we were hoping to spend $1 million, but we could stretch it to 1.3. Great. That's helpful now, because as we're working with you, the interior designer and the architect, and trying to, make all of this come together, we know we've got a little wiggle room, right? We're going to try and coach and guide this process to $1 million. But if we can get you your program and the finishes and everything you want for 1.2, now we know that will work for you, and we don't have to jump through hoops to try and cut this stuff out to get that, to $1 million. So
That's right.
I found that that's very helpful, and I'd be curious for your feedback if you ask one of your clients that and see how they respond.
I'm going to try that. I love it. That's really good. Steve Basic, I've heard him say, is he always asks clients not what their budget is, but what number scares you for the budget. That's an interesting version of that too. Wade, you're a gem, dude. I love spending time with you. This is getting published after Build Show Live, but I can tell you, I'm looking forward to seeing you and spending time with you at Build Show Live. And then I don't think we'll be at IBS together, I'm assuming, this year. You're probably not coming. I wouldn't come if I didn't have to. This year is going to be poopy. But I'll see you for sure, and our listeners will see you potentially at both Build Show Live and JLC Live, which is in your backyard. That one's up in Providence, Rhode Island. Our shows are kind of like sister shows a little bit. They're both run by a company called Informa. And usually Wade and I have speaking engagements at JLC Live. We always have fun events to do. So if you're listening to this and you missed Build Show Live, consider coming to JLC Live. And of course, the dates are, by the time we publish this, the dates are already published for 2026 Build Show Live in San Antonio. I actually don't know the dates, or I'd tell you. They're probably somewhere on a Slack message somewhere, but we already have them set for 2026. So consider coming 11 months from now when you're listening to this. But Wade, appreciate your time. Go follow Wade at WKP Builders. William K. Paquin. What's your middle name? William K. What's the K?
Wade.
Did I just go? Well, have I not? Why did I say William? I guess I was using W as like, isn't that the like army term of like, when you say W, you're supposed to say William? I don't know. What's the K stand for in KP?
That's all my initials. Yeah, Wade Kenneth Paquin, all my initials.
There we go. Wade Kenneth Paquin Builders. You're awesome, dude. And of course, you can see Wade's content on thebuildshow.com. Wade is one of the 5 OG Build Show Network contributors that helped me launch the network in like December of 2019 is when we published our first videos. It was Wade and me and Jake and Steve and Brent were the original 5, and here now we're grown to 15. And by the time this gets published, we also you probably know this, Wade, we have I think 4 Build Pros that have been added as well. Yep. We're basically republishing their great content and they're like-minded folks. So we've got Awesome Framers now, which is Tim Mueller. We've got Undecided with Matt Farrell. Fantastic channel with really good tech on there. He's really good at explaining tech. We've got the Stud Pack guys, which are currently building a brand new house in Houston, just 2 hours or so from me in Austin, Texas. And then we've got Richard from Finished Carpentry TV, who also co-hosts the, what is Brent's podcast? I'm totally blanking on the name all of a sudden. This is an old man moment. I need to take my pills, Wade. What's the pill that I take for memory?
saying you need Prevagen.
Prevagen. I need to take my Prevagen pills. Richard is also on the podcast with Brent and his son. Fantastic finish carpenter up in Dallas. And we're also publishing his finished carpentry content on the Build Show as well, underneath the Build Pro tab. So go check that out. That's brand new for some of our podcast listeners. Well, that being said, guys, from the Reisinger Build Studios in Austin, Texas, hit that subscribe button. We've got new Build Show content every single Friday on the podcast. We drop new episodes. Follow us both on Facebook or Instagram. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on Build Show Podcast.